Introduction: The Crisis of Communication in Global Conflict. A context. The urgent need for secure and rapid military communication in WW2. The expansion of global conflict during World War II presented the United States military with formidable challenges, none more pressing than the need for instantaneous, secure communication. One, naval and amphibious operations, particularly in the vast and fluid Pacific theater, required the reliable transmission of critical tactical data, troop movements, artillery coordinates, and rapid command changes. While conventional radio technology allowed for speed, it left messages vulnerable to interception and compromise by foreign adversaries. Conversely, the contemporary cipher machines used for high security, while robust, were inherently slow, often requiring up to 30 minutes to encrypt and decrypt a message of only 3 lines. This temporal lag rendered secure communication ineffective for the rapidly shifting conditions of fluid combat. The necessity for a communication edge was not unprecedented. During the First World War, the U.S. military had employed hundreds of Native Americans, including individuals from the Choctaw, Comanche, and Cherokee nations, to securely transmit code via wire and radio. However, these programs proved to be strategically fragile in the long term. Following the armistice, other world powers dispatched intelligence personnel to the United States with the explicit aim of studying and documenting these indigenous languages and communication methods. This historical failure created a mandate for the United States military. Any new, truly secret code needed to be built upon a foundation that was geographically and linguistically isolated, resistant to pre-study, and completely indecipherable to foreign intelligence. The Johnston Proposal and the Camp Elliott Demonstration, February 1942. The search for an unbreakable communication solution found its answer in the Diné Bizaad, or Navajo language, championed by Philip Johnston. Johnston, a World War I veteran, possessed a unique understanding of the language's potential, having grown up on the Navajo reservation in Arizona and maintained fluency over 24 years. Recognizing the critical role linguists had played in the prior conflict, Johnston proposed that the Navajo language could offer the ultimate security layer for U.S. code making. Johnston's rationale for selecting Diné Bizaad rested on 3 critical properties that addressed the failures of the World War I attempts. First, the language was overwhelmingly an unwritten language, meaning Japanese intelligence could not rely on captured documents, standard linguistic manuals, or frequency analysis of written texts. Second, it was completely unintelligible to anyone except another Navajo speaker, ensuring immediate operational security. Third, Johnston noted that the language was rich and fluent, providing ample vocabulary from which specialized arbitrary code words could be devised for military terms. This theory was put to a crucial test on February 28, 1942. Johnston presented his concept to Major General Clayton B. Vogel, commanding general of the Amphibious Corps, Pacific Fleet, at Camp Elliott, California. Working with 4 Navajo speakers residing in the Los Angeles area, and 1 already on active duty Marine staff officers, composed simulated field combat messages. 1 code talker translated the message into the tribal dialect and transmitted it. The receiving Navajo instantly translated it back into flawless English, maintaining the original structure. The success of this demonstration was immediate and overwhelming. The messages were transferred with complete accuracy, yet the language remained utterly incomprehensible to the observing Marine staff officers. 6. The demonstration confirmed that the unique linguistic properties of Navajo, combined with its cultural isolation, guaranteed communication security in a way that previous Native American language efforts had failed to achieve. Based on this incontrovertible evidence, General Vogel recognized the immense strategic value and immediately recommended to the Commandant of the Marine Corps that at least 200 Navajos be recruited as communication specialists. This rapid authorization and recruitment bypassed typical military bureaucratic delays, signaling that the U.S. military viewed secure and rapid communication as an existential crisis, requiring an immediate, unconventional solution. The initial 29 Navajo recruits arrived at the recruit depot in San Diego in May 1942, shortly after the Camp Elliott test, ready to begin basic training and, crucially, devise the first systematic code. II. Diné Bizaad, the linguistic barrier and the architecture of the code. The Navajo Code achieved its legendary status as unbreakable due to an unprecedented synergy between the inherent complex structure of Diné Bizaad and the layered, formalized cipher architecture developed by the initial recruits. The inherent complexity of the Navajo language, Diné Bizaad. The first barrier to cryptanalysis was the language itself. Diné Bizaad belongs to the Athabascan language family, a linguistic group geographically and structurally distant from the languages familiar to American, European, and East Asian cryptographers at the time of its adoption. The language was fundamentally an unwritten language, a factor that eliminated the adversary's primary resource for linguistic attack. Documented orthography or standardized translation texts 5. Furthermore, the language possesses a complex and unusual phonology and morphology that defy easy comprehension or transcription by non-native speakers. Tonal system. Navajo is a tonal language where pitch variation high, low, rising, or falling is phonemic, meaning a change in tone can completely alter a word's meaning. This complexity adds a significant layer of difficulty to attempted transcription and interpretation by a foreign listener. 8. Unusual consonant inventory. The language features a high number of consonants that are rare or non-existent in European and East Asian languages, providing a formidable acoustic barrier. Most critically, Navajo employs a wide array of obstruents, including ejective stops and affricates, e.g., /t ejective /tl bar ejective /ts ejective /ts ejective /k ejective $. These sounds are produced by a burst of air pressure from the glottis rather than the lungs, creating distinctive, explosive sounds that are often difficult for non-native ears to isolate or accurately reproduce. 8. Lateral affricates, e.g., /tl bar /tl bar aspirated $, and /tl bar ejective $. These phonemes involve the release of air over the sides of the tongue and are virtually unknown in Japanese phonetics. 8. The difficulty in accurately recognizing, transcribing, and segmenting the unique sounds of Dene Bizod created an initial, insurmountable hurdle for intercepting Japanese analysts, severely compromising any attempts to use acoustic intelligence for decryption. B. The code construction, layering secrecy on native tongue. Building upon this inherent linguistic fortress, the first 29 code talkers moved to Camp Elliott and then Camp Pendleton, California, where they devised the systematic two-tiered cipher. 1. The intentional combination of the language's phonological uniqueness and a formalized, arbitrary lexicon ensured the code's integrity. Word association, vocabulary, specialized terms. The first layer of the code was a dictionary of military terms. Since Navajo lacked pre-existing words for modern warfare, recruits assigned common Navajo words often referencing nature or animals to specialized military concepts. The initial vocabulary consisted of 211 terms, which grew to 411, and eventually totaled over 600 terms by the end of the war. 2 examples include referring to a submarine as bishlo, iron fish, or a fighter plane as dahi tihai, hummingbird. 1. This substitution method randomized the context of the intercepted message, forcing cryptographers to try and guess the arbitrary military association for thousands of natural vocabulary terms. The alphabet cipher spelling method. For terms not covered by the specialized vocabulary such as proper nouns, names, and less common terms, the code talkers utilized an alphabet cipher. A Navajo word was assigned to represent each English letter. The recipient would then translate the Navajo word back into its English equivalent and use only the first letter of that English word to spell out the message. 7. The brilliance of this design lay in its cryptographic depth. Most English letters were represented by multiple Navajo words, often 2 or 3. 2. For example, the letter A could be transmitted using the Navajo words for ant, wallachi, axe, or apple. 2. This technique eliminated the statistical Achilles heel of simple substitution ciphers. In standard ciphers, high-frequency letters like E or T create exploitable statistical signatures. By employing multiple substitutions for common letters, the code talkers ensured that the corresponding Navajo code words appeared with roughly equal frequency, effectively frustrating the statistical analysis that Japanese cryptographers typically relied upon. This intentional obfuscation elevated the Navajo program from a simple language mask to a sophisticated variable homophonic cipher. The resulting code was so complex and sensitive that it had to be fully memorized by every code talker, necessitating extensive specialized training in radio operation and code application at Camp Elliott. 1. Table 1. Navajo code vocabulary examples, and function. English military term Navajo, term literal Navajo translation code function, submarine bishlo, iron fish specialized military term fighter plane dahi tihai, hummingbird specialized military term bomber plane jaysho buzzard specialized military term, captain bishleginaki 2. Silver bars rank association, metaphor, dive bomber genie chicken hawk specialized military term the letter a wallachi ant alphabet code, substitution Roman 3. Strategic implementation and decisive operational impact. In the Pacific theater, the primary strategic benefit of the Navajo code talkers was the creation of a communications system that effectively broke the conventional trade-off between speed and security. This allowed the Marines to execute complex, high-tempo combat operations with a level of coordination previously unattainable. A deployment and expansion following the successful design phase, the program expanded rapidly. An estimated 350 to 400 Navajo communications specialists served within the U.S. Marine Corps during the war. Integrated into units across the entire Pacific theater, the Code Talkers were indispensable, providing secure tactical messaging for every major American amphibious operation. From the early challenges at Guadalcanal through the later decisive assaults at Iwo Jima and Okinawa 4B, the crux of advantage. Speed and reliability. The true revolutionary advantage provided by the program was its speed. Conventional encryption and decryption using cryptographic machines could take up to 30 minutes to process a concise 3-line message. In stark contrast, a code talker could translate the English message into Navajo, transmit it, and have the recipient translate it back into English in approximately 20 seconds. This quantitative difference, a speed advantage of roughly 90 times over mechanized cipher processes, It meant that voice transmission, normally the fastest but most vulnerable method of communication, could now be conducted with the security of a complex cipher. This speed allowed commanders to make instantaneous command decisions, synchronize fire support, and coordinate rapidly shifting troop movements in real time, greatly accelerating the pace of combat and response to enemy action. The ability to guarantee secure, instantaneous command flow transformed the tactical landscape for the Marines during their island-hopping campaign. Table 2, Comparative Communication Speed Analysis, WW2 Encryption Method Task. Transmit 3 lines of English. Time to encrypt, transmit, and decrypt. Efficiency advantage. Conventional cipher machine mechanical electrical cipher processing, 30 minutes. Base standard 1.0x, Navajo Code Talkers voice translation and transmission, 20 seconds. 90x faster. C, the apex of impact. The Battle of Iwo Jima, February-March 1945. The strategic indispensability of the Code Talkers reached its zenith during the brutal Battle of Iwo Jima, where the need for rapid communication security to coordinate the complex assault on the heavily defended island was absolute. 14 Major Howard Connor, the 5th Marine Division signal officer, reported that during the first 2 days of continuous, intense fighting, 6 dedicated Navajo Code Talkers worked tirelessly around the clock. These 6 men successfully sent and received more than 800 messages critical to the coordination of the landing and subsequent advance. 14 Crucially, every single one of those 800 messages was transmitted and received without a single error. 7 In the chaos of an amphibious landing, where miscommunication can lead to catastrophic friendly fire or tactical failure. This perfect fidelity provided commanders with an extraordinary level of trust and confidence in the reliability of their communication line. This confidence allowed for flawless execution of complex, time-sensitive commands. Major Connor later provided a definitive assessment of the program's value, famously declaring, "Were it not for the Navajos, the Marines would never have taken Iwo Jima." The program's success at Iwo Jima proved that it was not merely a secure code, but a profoundly reliable and tactically superior communication system, IV. The failure of Imperial Japanese cryptography. The Navajo Code Talkers program holds a unique place in military history. It was the only battlefield cipher created and used by the United States during World War I or World War II that was never broken by the enemy. 2A Japanese intelligence capabilities. An initial bafflement. Japanese intelligence demonstrated high capabilities throughout the Pacific War, notably breaking and exploiting codes leading up to engagements like the Battle of Midway, where the U.S. successfully deceived them by broadcasting a fake water shortage report. 15 However, the Navajo language-based encryption proved to be an impenetrable barrier. 7 Japanese efforts to crack the code were significant, reflecting the strategic frustration it caused. Lieutenant General Seizo Arisu, the head of Japanese intelligence, later admitted that despite their best attempts, "We never cracked the Marine Code." 13 Arisu confirmed that the Imperial Army dedicated 30 full-time cryptanalysts for more than 2 years, recording thousands of intercepted transmissions, and desperately consulting Japanese university linguists in their vain attempt to decipher the meaning of the sounds. 13 The complex combination of alien phonology, section IIA, and the layered arbitrary code lexicon, section IIB, proved to be an insurmountable obstacle for Japanese cryptanalysts. The persistent failure to acquire real-time intelligence on critical marine movements drained Japanese resources and morale, forcing their commanders to operate without reliable data regarding the timing and location of critical American offensives. The test of torture. The case of Sergeant Joe Kiyomiya. The integrity of the Navajo Code, was tested under the most extreme circumstances when the Japanese captured a Navajo soldier who was fluent in the language. Sergeant Joe Lee Kiyumiya, a Navajo serving in the U.S. Army's 200th Coast Artillery Unit, was captured after the fall of the Philippines in 1942 and subsequently survived the brutal Bataan Death March 12. Aware that the U.S. was using Navajo for secure transmissions, Japanese captors subjected Kiyumiya to torture, attempting to force him to decode intercepted marine messages. 17 This incident served as the ultimate test of the code's design integrity. Although Kiyumiya was a fluent Navajo speaker, the transmissions sounded like nonsense or gibberish to him. 16 This profound inability to decipher the messages proved the code was not merely a conversational disguise. It was a formal, systematic two-tiered cipher that relied on specialized, memorized vocabulary and the use of arbitrary word associations. 16 Deciphering the code required specific training in the Code Talker dictionary and procedures, not just native fluency. The Kiyumiya case thus provided empirical validation that the Navajo Code was a true, formalized military cipher, secure against both external cryptanalysis and the internal threat of a captured native speaker. Kiyumiya survived the ordeal and was a prisoner in Nagasaki when the second atomic bomb was dropped, later earning recognition as a Hibakusha atomic bomb survivor. 16 Legacy recognition and the social paradox. The historical arc of the Navajo Code Talkers program illustrates a complex paradox in American history, where indigenous cultural resilience became a critical strategic asset. Yet the men who wielded it faced decades of institutional neglect and civic rights denial upon their return. A post-war classification and decades of silence. Immediately following the cessation of hostilities in 1945, the Navajo Code was officially categorized as a security classified asset due to its continued potential value for future conflicts. 7 This strategic decision mandated absolute secrecy, meaning the Code Talkers, whose courage and skill had saved countless American lives and military engagements, were legally forbidden from revealing their wartime contributions to the public or even their families. 7 This enforced silence persisted for over 2 decades. The code was not officially declassified until 1968.2. This delay denied the Code Talkers the immediate public recognition and honors they had justly earned, establishing a profound cultural and historical oversight. The timeline of recognition. Even following the 1968 declassification, public recognition remained slow and inconsistent throughout the 1970s and 1980s. 18 It was not until September 17, 1992, that the Department of Defense formally honored the veterans at the Pentagon, dedicating an exhibit that displayed the original code and specialized equipment. 7 The highest honors were delayed even longer. Decades after their pivotal service, the 5 original Code Talkers who devised the initial lexicon received the Congressional Gold Medal in 2001, with hundreds of subsequent Code Talkers receiving the Congressional Silver Medal. 18 The passage of nearly 6 decades between their indispensable service and the presentation of the highest national honors underscores the systemic failure to promptly acknowledge the contributions of indigenous servicemen. See, the irony of assimilation and service. The narrative of the Code Talkers is deeply interwoven with a profound historical irony regarding U.S. policy toward Native American identity. For generations preceding the war, the U.S. government actively pursued policies of cultural assimilation, often enforced through boarding schools that strictly forbade Native children from speaking their ancestral languages. 13 The eventual success of the Navajo Code reversed this policy on the most critical stage. The very words that had been targeted for eradication in those classrooms became the nation's secret weapon, providing the key to defeating Imperial Japan's formidable intelligence apparatus. 13 Their service became a powerful, enduring reminder of the strength inherent in cultural diversity. The Code Talkers demonstrated unequivocally that preserving indigenous knowledge and identity, long marginalized, could translate directly into critical strategic military advantage. 20 The fight for civil rights. Denied voting rights. Perhaps the greatest contradiction of the program's legacy occurred immediately after the war, when many Code Talkers returned home only to discover that the country they had defended continued to deny them fundamental civil liberties. While the Indian Citizenship Act of 1924 had conferred citizenship on all Native Americans born within the United States, it did not automatically guarantee voting rights. 21 Upon their return, thousands of Native veterans, including the Navajo Code Talkers, found themselves prohibited from participating in basic civic processes. 21 Many states, including Arizona and New Mexico, employed discriminatory statutes, such as arbitrary incompetency clauses, prerequisites of paying property taxes or residing off a reservation, to deny Native citizens the vote. 21 specific instances of this denial are chillingly documented. In May 1946, Former Marine Corps Code Talkers Jimmy King and Howard Nez were explicitly denied voter registration in Shiprock, New Mexico. Shortly after risking their lives in the Pacific, 22 James Manolito faced the same denial in Apache County, Arizona. Around the same time, 22, the government's decision to prioritize keeping the language classified for its strategic utility, while simultaneously denying the men who spoke it their fundamental rights, highlighted a deep-seated socio-political contradiction. However, the sheer magnitude and undeniable heroism of the Code Talkers' contribution provided the moral and political capital necessary to fuel the broader post-WWII Native American civil rights movement, ultimately leading to the dismantling of these discriminatory state voting barriers, VI. Conclusion: the enduring significance of the Unbreakable Code. The history of the Navajo Code Talkers program is a definitive case study in military innovation, cryptographic resilience, and cultural paradox. The Code Talkers program successfully transformed the specialized lexicon of Diné Bizod into the most secure and efficient battlefield communication system of World War II. By eliminating the trade-off between communication speed and security, they provided the Marines with an unparalleled temporal advantage, epitomized by their error-free performance at the critical turning point of Iwo Jima. The code's integrity, protected both by the inherent complexity of the Navajo language and its sophisticated two-tiered cipher structure, remained absolute, successfully resisting the concerted efforts of 30 dedicated Japanese cryptanalysts over 2 years, and surviving the ultimate test of fidelity through the torture of a captured Navajo speaker. The long-term legacy of the Code Talkers transcends military history. It stands as a profound testament to cultural resilience. The language that the U.S. government had historically sought to suppress was ultimately utilized as the key instrument in securing global defense. Although recognition was significantly delayed by institutional secrecy and complicated by the post-war denial of basic civil liberties, the Code Talkers' service unequivocally demonstrated that indigenous knowledge systems and cultural diversity are not liabilities but foundational, critical strategic assets that saved countless American lives and irrevocably shaped the outcome of the Pacific War.